Order. Good morning, everyone. I call this meeting to order. With us today, we have the Department of Transportation Infrastructure Renewal to speak with us about investment in road improvements and repairs. Let's begin with introduction of committee members, starting with Mr. McGuire.
Good morning. Brendan McGuire, Halifax Atlantic.
Suzanne Lonis-Croft, MLA, Lunenburg.
Good morning. I'm Margaret Miller from Hants East.
Morning. Gordon Wilson, Clare Digby.
Ian Rankin, Timberley Prospect.
Morning, my name is Tim Houston. I'm the MLA for Pictou East.
Good morning, my name is Dave Wilson, MLA for Sackville-Cobequid.
I'm Alan McMaster, MLA for Inverness, chair of the committee. Perhaps Mr. LaFleche, you and your colleagues could introduce yourselves, and then after that, perhaps you could start with some opening comments.
Much for inviting us here today. I think this is an annual event we look forward to. On my left is Bruce Fitzner, who's our chief engineer, and Bruce has been with the department 34 years and 9 months. I don't know what that tells you, but it's telling me that he's got another 5 years to go. And he's held many, many jobs on the highway side of the department and is also responsible for the public works side at this point. Barb Bailey, who's on the far right, is our Executive Director of Maintenance and Operations for Highways, so you can read into that snow plowing. It was all her fault last winter. And also, obviously, spring pothole maintenance, summer maintenance, brush cutting, et cetera, general road maintenance. Peter Hackett is our Director of Highway Design and Construction. So if it's new roads, rebuilt roads, repaved roads, surface treatments, things like that, that's what Peter takes care of for the department. He's in charge of that section. And Diane Surrett, right here, is our Executive Director of Finance, and we share her with the Department of Internal Services. And she also does infrastructure, strategic capital planning, so she holds the purses and can answer the money questions. Our road infrastructure helps keep the economy moving. It connects people, communities, businesses to where they work, where they go to school, where they shop, etc. It allows us to move goods in and out of this province. It also links Nova Scotia to Canada and the rest of North America. And basically, we do have other links. As you know, we have some ferry links, but the road link and the rail link through the Amherst area into Sackville is a very important connection for us to the rest of the world. Province-wide, we manage and maintain 90% of the province's roads in our department. This is somewhat different from other provinces where the municipalities, the cities, really manage their own roads. In our case, the only real jurisdictions that manage a lot of their own roads would be Halifax, the City of Halifax, and the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. There are towns who manage some of the main streets in their town, but generally the province manages about 90% of the roads. And why is that important? Because the federal gas tax goes to municipalities and towns, not to the province, but we own the roads for which the gas tax was originally collected. So there's a bit of a disconnect there financially, which Diane can explain if you're at all interested in that. We have 23,000 kilometers of roadway, and we have about 4,100 bridges. We own and operate 9 ferries throughout Nova Scotia, and our total budget for the road side of the department is about $220 million. And that goes towards new roads, bridge construction, and all sorts of other things outlined in our 5-year capital plan. And that capital plan for the next year will be coming out shortly, probably within the next month or so. That's an annual capital plan. We usually bring it out shortly after the government announces its overall capital plan. We have a lot of road infrastructure for a province of our size, mainly because the province happens to own the roads. But we feel, as experts here in the road business, as staff, that we have too much road infrastructure for the tax base we have in the province. That's not the taxes we collect, but rather the tax base we have. And of course, from time to time, We've tried to thin down that, but it's very difficult because people would like their roads, even if they're low-volume roads, even if they're rarely used. People like to have the convenience of having their roads, and they want them paved and in good condition. As with every other province in Canada, our main challenge is to keep these roads in a good state of repair and to maintain them in safe working order. And I'll mention safety because, as you know, as traffic volume builds up on some roads, there's a requirement to increase the capacity of the road. Otherwise, it could become unsafe due to a higher volume on a road which is meant to carry a lower volume. And that happens in areas which are growing or through areas where a lot of traffic has increased for reasons of economic activity or commuters. Our first priority in the department always is road safety. That's number one, and unfortunately yesterday, as you know, we had a very, very tragic accident, very, very sad. We don't like to see that. We want our roads to be safe. We want our people, our citizens, and those who travel to the province or through it to feel that they are on safe roads. One of the things that we have to do every year is determine priorities. Of course, at the end of the day, it's the politicians that choose the final priority, but we provide them with the advice, the base facts, so that they can make the appropriate choices on behalf of citizens. We, through Peter's group and Barb's group, do very sophisticated assessments every year of our roads. We have some very nice electronic equipment, some of which I worked on 30 years ago when I still knew more than I knew today. They take all sorts of detailed measurements of roads so that we can understand how a road is behaving, what sort of condition it's in, and when it might need some sort of maintenance, repair, or upgrade. We very much value the feedback that we get from our MLAs, our municipal councillors, our federal MPs, and any other elected representatives. In fact, Bruce Fitzner, our chief engineer to my left, has spent considerable time in the last 2 weeks, for the second time this year, meeting with any MLA from any party, or even the MLAs from non-parties, who want to meet with him and talk about the road concerns of their citizens. We go over what Bruce would consider to be our priorities in their area. They give us what they get from the citizens or what they feel are their priorities. We try as best we can with our limited budget to match those up and to be flexible enough within the realm of reality to get the roads that the citizens want done in a future 5-year plan. So all of that work goes into our 5-year plan, as well as, in many cases, what MLAs want done is maintenance work. It's not major repaving, it's not something that's going in the plan, but it's the sort of day-to-day things like brush cutting, pothole filling, ditch clearing out, culvert. Much of that work would come out of our RIM budget. This year we've had about $16 million, and I think in the material that we've handed out, there's a chart of how the RIM budget has varied over the years. So we've had about $16 million in this fiscal year in the RIM budget, which is up from about 2 years ago when it was $15 million. I want to talk a little bit about the gas tax. I know that people have their own thoughts about gas tax, and they don't really like our thoughts. But the problem with the gas tax, the RMV fees, et cetera, is there are not enough of them. They're not a large enough amount to actually pay for road maintenance. I hear many commentaries, some of my friends out there in different organizations, some of them watching this show right now, about how we should spend the gas tax on roads. And we actually do spend the gas tax on roads. We're actually short about somewhere between 70, 80, 90 million on an annual basis from what we would need in gas tax, RMV fees, et cetera, to pay for all the road work we do. That would mean that the gas tax is actually maybe 4, 5, 6 cents too low. Now, at no point do I want anyone to rush out and say, boy, I just heard the deputy say he wants to raise the gas tax. I didn't say that. What I said is the rumor, the paradigm out there that the gas tax money is being spent somewhere else, or that there's a big box of gas tax money under the Premier's desk is not true. I've now been through 4 different premiers. In fact, and I've checked under every one of those desks, and when Premier McNeil arrived, he and I looked under the desk for the gas tax money. And we actually found it out on a road in Inverness County, Mr. Chair. So I'm sorry about that, that sort of paradigm out there is not true, but it's not true. And I'm not speaking of the federal gas tax, because I said that goes directly through municipalities. They may spend it on the roads they might own, or towns might, but we don't get that gas tax to spend on roads. I'm talking about the provincial one and the provincial RMV fees. Last year, in fact, we spent about 70 million more on roads than we collected through those sources. As a society, we always find a way to reduce fuel consumption. We're getting more and more fuel-efficient cars, which helps the environment, reduces greenhouse gases, and eases the burden on our pocketbooks because we pay less gas tax. But it means that we as a province take in less money. Well, that's fine. It's good for the environment. We have to find ways to be more innovative in terms of what we do ourselves for roads. Just as vehicle fuel consumption has gone down over the years, we've got to find a way to build roads that last longer, that are safer, and that are cheaper. So my staff are very dedicated to doing that. We focus a lot on innovation. We've brought in a lot of innovations, and I'm sure if you want to ask questions about them, just mention one, the pre-brining liquid applications we now do in certain areas of the province before storms. That lessens the cost of actually plowing, clearing later, spreading salt later, and that's one of the innovations. We've got many, many innovations we brought in, and every year we get together. This year we got together at Dundee, and I know, just saying that because I know that people have accessed that through Freedom of Information, wanting to know how much we spent thinking about innovations at Dundee. That's all available if you need to know how much we spent there. My staff are very dedicated to looking at how we can improve service, and we spent a percentage of our time. I've got very dedicated engineers. These engineers could be somewhere else. They could be in another job, making more money, but they want to serve the public of Nova Scotia. They've dedicated their career, like Mr. Fitzner's 34 years, to the province of Nova Scotia. They've made some sacrifices to work here, and they're working very hard on behalf of the citizens. We're always looking for ways to save money on bridges. Bridges are very expensive. I mentioned we have 4,100 of them. We're taking advantage of any technology we can to make bridges last longer and cheaper. As it is, as you know, some of you, we've got bridges that are 100 years old. I believe that's true in the chairs area, right? And also down in Mr. Wilson's area. We're working on one right now. Another thing that we do in the department to make things better in terms of transportation is our active transportation thrust. This year, the minister announced the start of the Blue Route. We're working very hard with Tourism Nova Scotia, the tourism agency, and Bicycle Nova Scotia to ensure that the Blue Route is completed and connected across this province. It's modeled after the Route Verte, the Green Route in Quebec, and it's where Quebec, it serves as an incredible tourism asset. We hope to have the same here. I know I heard Mr. Maguire on the radio last week talking very much about the potential Blue Route sections in and Mr. Houston, I think in your area we opened the first section of Blue Route this summer. We have to be bold, we have to take risks, so we always take some risks. In engineering, it's all about risk reduction, but calculated risks. Risks you know about. So sometimes things go bad, sometimes projects don't always go as you want them to go, but we do our best and our engineers do our best to make sure that we make the appropriate choices for Nova Scotians. One of the things we need to do is reduce our bridge inventory. I spoke about this last time I was here, and immediately the media wanted to know what was the secret list of bridges we're going to close. Well, there is no secret list. It's very much how it happens is a bridge comes up and the bridge has to be closed for safety reasons following years of downgrading and inspections. And then we present to the minister the idea of not replacing that bridge if there's sufficiently low volume, and there are alternatives. Many of our bridges, which are 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, were built in a different area, in a different era, some of them in the horse and buggy era, when cars weren't as fast and convenient and as accessible as they are today. And those bridges are no longer needed to the same extent they were back then. So, and they have very low volume, so we sometimes suggest to the politicians that the bridges be not replaced. In some cases, they're downgraded, and they're used for walking bridges. In other cases, we make minor repairs so they could carry cars, but maybe not heavy trucking anymore. But we've got to reduce our bridge inventory and focus on the bridges we really need and make them really good. The other part of that is roads. We have a lot of roads. In some cases, roads are no longer used for what they were formerly used for. We would like to return some roads to gravel. And we do mention to the ministers and his colleagues many times, sometimes when a road needs repaving, our chosen choice is to return it to gravel. I made the mistake of mentioning that in a community hall about a year ago, and the MLA was not happy with me. But we feel we've got to provide the best advice we can, and if a road is extremely low volume and it's going to be very expensive to rebuild, returning it to a good gravel road is not a bad idea, and it's a good way to spend taxpayers' money. We're doing a feasibility study, as you know, on twinned highways. Everybody wants to know, we get requests every day almost, when's something going to happen, when are we going to hear something? Well, the good news, and Mr. Fitzner can elaborate on this a little later, the good news is that we will have some preliminary results early in the new year, which Cabinet will have a chance to look at, and then we will proceed to the consultation with the public stage. So things are happening, things are moving on, but as yet we don't have anything to give you today. You know these 8 sections we're looking at, and you know the safety studies we've done on some of those sections, which we released last year, which started the ball rolling. It would be very costly, hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion or more, to twin all of the roads that everybody wants to twin. So that is one of the reasons we're looking at tolling. Mr. Fitzner can tell you that in many cases our roads are considered safe, but sometimes the way people drive, or sometimes small rush hour traffic volumes get above the safety limit and cause, for short periods of time, dangerous conditions on those roads. So we're always looking at how we can improve them. There are other ways than twinning. 2+1 highways are used all over Europe. We have a modified 2+1 in the valley, which was put in several years ago. And even though it's not as safe as a twinned road in many people's mind, it does provide a separation between the two sides to somewhat avoid head-ons, and it does provide passing lanes. I know that Mr. Wilson, you would drive that road frequently. As part of the feasibility study, our consultant will be conducting a series of public consultations throughout the province. This is a great opportunity for the citizens of Nova Scotia and for you, the MLAs, to get out there and to listen to what the people have to say, but also for us to educate the people in some of the facts and to educate them on the choices that Nova Scotians have to make regarding roads. Nobody really likes tolls, but tolls are a universal option that are used in many, many locations of the world. And the main factor behind tolling is that we could get many of these roads done quicker and make them safer and drive higher volumes of traffic through them in a short time, as opposed to our regular road plan, our regular capital plan, which would have many of these roads twinned a long way out. So I want to thank you for your attention. I know I had a rather long introduction. Usually my introduction is quite short, Mr. Speaker, but today we wanted to put out a few messages there. So with that, we're open to questions, and I will direct the questions to the appropriate staff member as we go along.
Thank you, Mr. LaFlèche. It was a very informative opening. We'll move to Mr. Houston for 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I actually found it riveting. informative is an understatement of that introduction. So thank you very much. I do want to actually, start with a couple questions just to orientate us on the numbers. So I do think they're best directed to Ms. Surratt. But looking at the budget for this year, there is on the tangible capital assets budget for transportation, infrastructure renewal, highways and bridges, $220 million. That's the, I guess that's the capital budget for this year. And then also under the departmental expenses summary for this year, the budget was for there's a line item for maintenance improvements, $216 million. I just wonder if you can just tell me how the $220 million capital and the $216 interact. Do I take that to imply that there'll be $436 million spent on roads this year, or is there an overlap between the two?
Ms. Surratt. Sorry. Mr. LaFlamme.
Sorry.
I'm looking at 23.2 from the departmental expenses.
Okay.
I don't know if this is in the package that came or if it's something I dug up elsewhere. But there's maintenance improvements, $216 million. Maybe that's a number that is familiar to people.
We get that page over here.
Mr. Houston, would you be able to table the paper you have there, or to provide a page number and a document so they can
I can,
reference?
but I didn't. It was more of just a. Mr. Rep may be able to answer how they interact.
I'm looking at a
Surratt.
different page here.
Okay.
So on highways, yes, and maintenance, and it would be both the operating and capital. So you're referring to two different sets, two different budgets. So our TCA
Yeah.
budget, our capital budget,
Yeah.
which is $220 million on the highway side, and then on the maintenance improvement side. So that would be winter, summer maintenance, work on bridges, all of that. That's approximately, say, $212 million. So if you add the
Okay.
two together, if you want to come on the two, but yeah, you'd be over.
Okay, that was
Yep.
my question. Okay, so I do want to talk about the maintenance, the 200 and I had 216 budgeted for this year, 216 million.
Yeah.
You've just referenced 212. Would that be the actual kind of year to date, or maybe just another iteration of the budget?
It's just another iteration.
Okay.
I'm looking at my
Okay.
gas tax and the breakdown.
Okay,
Yep.
fair
Yep.
enough. Now, the budget for this year for maintenance improvements is, the budget in the official budget was 216 million. Do you have a sense as to how much of that has been spent year to date?
Year to date, well, a large portion of it is related to winter, and we haven't really hit the winter budget yet, so that's about $60 million. We're about 7 months through the year, so most of the summer budget would have been spent. We keep a small contingency, and then, of course, we have other maintenance on bridges and things of that nature.
Okay, maybe that's a question as to the 216.
Yes,
how
we
much
are on
of-
forecast. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. And then the 216, how is that split? Is it like X percentage is usually winter and Y percentage? Is there a rule of thumb? Is it 50-50 for summer versus winter?
No, yeah. So, yeah, the amortization, we do. You have to, so our operating budget is approximately $419 million. You have to consider that about $190 million of that budget is amortization for our capital assets. So it brings down that budget so significantly. So we.
Is it split between summer and winter? Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Is it 50-50?
Yeah,
or-
so here, I'll give you the exact of what we have in summer and winter. Okay, so our winter budget is actually relatively about the same. It's about 61 million
Okay.
is allocated to both summer and winter. We do have a pot that we hold centrally that we, as well.
Okay, that's
but yeah,
fair
you're
then.
looking at
Okay,
that.
so of the 216, I think would it be fair to say that the 216, 60-ish of that is winter and the difference is summer?
I'll ask Bruce here.
Mr. LaFlamme?
Sorry, we've got to figure out the page all the time, but I think Bruce has it here. So the 216 includes amortization and includes
That's-
summer. Winter
Is that the 190? 190 of the 216 is amortization? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so of the,
So that's mainly amortization, what you're looking at.
okay, so that's fine. So the 216 maintenance, 190 of that is amortization.
Right.
Is the difference the rim? Is it all rim?
No, I have a page here, actually, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to call you Speaker. Mr. Chair, that divides all this out, and Bruce will just go over all the numbers for you. 'Cause
But okay, maybe I'll look at that later, but I'm just trying to orientate myself as to
Yeah.
what's being spent. So
We
for the
have a
purposes
summer
of-
budget and a winter budget, and right now, this year, our anticipated winter budget is about 60.578 million. Last year, we actually spent 75 million, but I don't know if any of you lived through last winter, but that was a bit of an overage. And Bruce can go into this in great detail. I probably don't need this today, but the budget varies according to a 5-year average. So if we have a few bad winters, we've had 2 in a row, all of a sudden the total maintenance budget switches the balance more towards winter than summer.
Yeah,
And
okay.
so things vary.
Okay, so in terms of, I guess what I'm trying to zero down on is like maintenance is a huge concern, because if you don't maintain something, then obviously you got bigger problems down the road. So what I'm trying to understand is how much is being spent on maintenance, and I understand so far that the amount of money spent on maintenance comes out of that 216. It's not entirely dedicated to maintenance, but a portion of it is. Is the entire maintenance budget for the whole province capsulated in the RIM, which we know the RIM was 16, this is the Rural Roads Mitigation Fund. Is the entire RIM budget of 16 million, is that all of the money spent on maintenance in the province? Or is
Mr.
there another
Fitzner.
pocket of money?
Mr. Fitzner.
Basically, for the summer maintenance, we have a budget of about 60 million for the summer. That includes the 16 million for the RIM, so the 16 million is in the 60 million for the summer budget. We then also have, as mentioned before, a winter budget, about 60 million we're budgeting this year as well. Down in the maintenance improvement, the large portion of that is the amortization, which is basically paying off the capital roads that we've built before and then charging it to our operating budget.
Sure.
And then there's about 22 or 23 million of that is used for maintenance work, and it's stuff that it's below the TCA threshold. So for a road project, if it's below 500,000, it's not considered TCA. That would come out of that as well. So it could be small paving projects and that type of thing, or a bridge below 250,000.
But it would all be out of the 60. It all has to be out of the 60.
No, there would be like an additional 25 million out of the maintenance improvement budget that's not amortization on top of the 60. Okay, I know. I'm looking at
All right,
the page.
let's kind of got a little sidetracked, but I do
Yeah.
think this is really important. So I'm just trying to understand, pure bottom line number, how much is spent on maintenance. And what I understand so far is that there's a $60 million pot of money set aside for maintenance, summer maintenance.
Yes.
Some of that is dedicated to the RIM fund, which is 16 million.
Yes.
So that would leave 44 additional million dollars that somehow gets owed into the market for maintenance. So is $60 million the amount that's spent on summer maintenance in the province?
It would be 60 plus about 22 million on top of that. That's contracted out. So you would have the RIM is contracted out 16 million. The difference is done through our field operations, so our basis and our workers spend the additional, and then there's about another 22, 23 that's contracted out.
Okay,
So it would
that's
be
fine. That's
60
helpful.
plus the 20, whatever, 84 or 83 in that range.
Okay, so let's talk about the 60 for a brief moment here. Can we get a list of how that 60 million was spent by what you guys would call your internal zones around the province? Maybe can that list be provided in Excel? Not right now, but it'd be something that I would like to see, is where's the money being spent in the province? Is that something that you'd be willing to provide to the committee?
Mr. LaFleche.
Well, we can at least break that down by district, right, Bruce? We've got 4 districts. In fact, the 4 district directors are sitting somewhere where I'm not allowed to point. But we can break that down in their districts, and then I believe they can break that down through area managers. Yeah, so we can probably eventually break that down. I'm not sure that we can break that down to the exact riding, but we can get pretty close, okay? If that's what you're looking at. We can get Pictou County.
Okay. I think it would be of value to the members of this committee to see that. So that's something I would definitely ask for.
The capital we can get to the riding.
For sure, but the list of maintenance broken down as finely as you can, that's a request I would certainly make. So I appreciate that very much. And if you can provide any historical perspective on that breakdown, that would be useful as well. So, and before I leave that part of it, I guess I would just ask Mr. Fitzner, the 60 million budgeted for this year, how does that compare historically? Is that number going up or down over the last 3 years?
That is down slightly over last year and largely due because the heavy winters we've had the last couple of years. So we have a bottom line budget basically, and so we had to budget a little bit more this year for the winter, and so that had an impact on our summer money. So I'd say it's down slightly over last year, but that budget has been relatively flat for many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a new federal government that plans to spend a lot of money on infrastructure over the next 10 years. Has the department created a wish list of their top 10 projects they would like to submit to the new federal government to tap into? Do you have a list of 10 projects, and can you share that list with us?
Oh, okay. I think it's a bigger question than that. I'm not trying to dodge the question. Yes, we do have a list of all of our projects.
Can you share it with us?
As we do go through roads, et cetera. I think basically that list is sort of shared in the 5-year plan. But it's a bigger question because that infrastructure money that the federal government is promising is fairly broad. There's social infrastructure in there, et cetera, et cetera. We have no details in the federal program. So what we're really doing is, as the Minister McClellan is the infrastructure minister, he's coordinating an approach, a pan-government approach. Also, he'll be working with municipal affairs for the municipalities and Minister Reagan for the post-secondary sector to look at how we exactly prioritize and approach the federal government. But as yet, the federal government really, other than a bunch of bullets in an election pamphlet, we don't have a lot of details. The only early thing that we know is that they threw out the P3 screening. Okay, sure. But other than that, so we will have an overall list which will include road infrastructure and other capital things that we approach the feds on.
I guess what I'm just curious, it's going to start raining money. Everybody should have their bucket ready. So I just want to see, I'm just curious if you, from our roads maintenance, have your bucket ready.
We will have a bucket ready. We want to double check and triple check because some elements in our bucket may not be eligible, or they might be eligible under different programs. So depending how the federal buckets come out and what's allowed in them, we might change things. So we've got to be very flexible till we see what the federal government does.
Okay, but as yes, we sit here
we have
today,
a whole array of things because the 100 series or National Highway System highways have a different eligibility than local roads or trunks and routes. They're all in a different bucket, so to speak. So each one, we have to look and see what is the federal program and what would be eligible and move things around to maximize our ability to access the big rain of money.
Okay,
now, we got to remember,
that's
though, that the big rain of money will be cost shared. Okay,
yeah,
so in other words,
that's my question now. That's my question. Over the last, let's talk about over the last year, there's been a Build Canada Fund. Have we, as a province, left any money on the table because the province didn't proceed with road work that was previously approved to get money under the Build Canada Fund?
Mr. Fitzner.
Basically, the program that came out in 2014 was a 10-year program, The Department of Transportation has submitted 3 projects that have received tentative approval. One was on the Ingrimport interchange. We also put together a package of repaving 100 series, 20 sections over 4 years, and we have agreement for a piece of 101 just down below Digby. So the remaining money has not been allocated yet. Again, this is a 10-year program, so not all the projects automatically go the first year, and so...
So you haven't lost anything yet?
No, so no, exactly.
So there's opportunities there, and there'll be bigger opportunities once the new fund
Yeah.
Mr. LaFleur.
showers down on us.
I need to elaborate on that a little bit because the federal government started the New Build Canada Fund a bit late, so they wanted to basically kickstart things and get some early projects done. You might guess why. Anyway, we were early out the gate with those 3 projects that Mr. Fitzner is referring to, and my colleagues in the PEI in New Brunswick were rather mad at me since we got there too early and they didn't. But we did fairly well in the first round, but it's 10 years of money. So the money, the build up at Build Canada, the first 2 years, I believe, Bruce, were less federal money, so there was less of us to do, and then it builds up. But we have already divided up conceptually the federal Build Canada and sort of have an idea of what we would do over the 10 years of the program. Now there's, as you alluded to, there's new federal infrastructure money coming, and we're waiting to see what that will be. But we have left no money on the table from the early years of the New Build Canada Fund.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That's important clarification. Now, I guess I have just maybe 2 minutes this round.
You have about 4 minutes.
I have 4 minutes, okay. I do, I took your comments about too many roads need more gravel roads. I have a question. I have a lot of gravel roads in my constituency, and I don't know when the last time very many of those actually seen gravel is. So a lot of gravel roads are no longer gravel roads. They're dirt roads. And I'm just wondering, what is can you tell us how much has been spent on gravel for re-graveling of roads over the past construction season right here, and then put that into some historical perspective, because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of gravel being spread around.
Mr. LaFleur.
Mr. Fitzner is going to look that up for a second, but I want to explain that many people who think they have gravel roads don't have gravel roads. What they have is dirt roads, what you referred to.
Just I'll clarify that I'm talking about gravel roads.
Okay, okay. But many of our so-called gravel roads, in fact, have a very poor base. They're not properly built, properly drained gravel roads. And when we talk about returning a road to gravel, what we really mean is building a true gravel road like you see in other areas of Canada. We've got a few of them in Cape Breton now.
How often does a good gravel road need to be re-graveled, need gravel?
Well, let my maintenance executive director there.
Ms. Bailey. Ms.
How
Bailey.
often should a gravel road need gravel? They get graded once a year, but how often should they really need some gravel?
As the deputy mentioned, we don't have many true gravel roads. The graveling that we do now is mostly spot graveling for shaping the road, just repairing soft areas. But if you had a robust gravel road program, you would need probably 8 inches of good gravel on it, and then you could probably touch it up every couple of years, just minor touch-ups.
Okay, every couple of years. Okay, so...
That would just touch-ups, yes.
Sure, yeah. So back to the Deputy Minister. If we're going to tell people that you don't need to be on a paved road, there's nothing wrong with a good gravel road, which I do hear said quite often, what do you say to those people that think they're living on a gravel road, but you would suggest they're actually living on a dirt road? Would the same thing apply, that there's nothing wrong with a good dirt road, or would we be saying we should really try to get your road graveled?
Like that?
Ms. Bailey.
Yes, we are looking at our funding levels now, and we're trying to do a program where we could do more graveling on the gravel roads. And there's a balance, as the deputy and Bruce said, there's only a certain pot of money. So if you do more graveling, you're going to do less paving, patching. So there's a balance, and we're trying to do a little more graveling, but like I said, that will impact other activities.
Do you have a sense as to, if we say the population of people that think they live on a gravel road is 100%, Do you have a sense as to how many of those the department would say, well, no, you're not on a gravel road, you're on a dirt road? Would it be half, or do you have any kind of a sense as to?
I really couldn't comment on that.
Order.
I know.
Time has expired. I'm
40
sorry.
Okay.
Time has expired. We'll move to the NDP Caucus and Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here again. I think it was a year ago or some time ago. As was indicated, I think for my own riding, I don't have any provincial roads other than the highways that surround my community. But traveling around the province, I hear from constituents in other districts often about the road conditions, and of course, it's always a concern, especially the more rural you go in our province. Some of the roads are in bad shape. Would you agree, Deputy? I know you mentioned this earlier about innovation and being bold and taking risks, but would you agree that one of your priorities would be to stretch the amount of money you receive, stretch that as far as it can go to make sure that you can address as much either repair or construction of roads in the province? Is that, I mean, I would assume that would be a goal of the department? Mr. LaFlèche.
Well, that happens to be a goal of every deputy minister in every department, but we have to do that with the due consideration of the safety of the public.
So when I was going through preparing for today, looking at the 5-year improvement plans, the additions, went back to 2011-12, the 13-14 edition, and then of course the 14-15 edition. In the earlier ones, I noticed there was a page that had the title "Making Our Dollars Go Further." But I noticed in the most recent one, that page is no longer there. And when you look back, it talked about, I think, maybe being bold and the risks and how do we stretch the dollar to make sure that we're meeting the needs. Is there a reason why that page is not in the, I think it's the last 2 editions of the 5-year highway improvement plan that was...
We'll have to ask the author of that.
Mr. Fitzner.
And the author is?
There was no specific reason other than they wanted to, over the last couple of years, just sort of trim down the report a little bit more to focus more on the projects and less on all the flowery stuff that I had put up front in the original one. So it's all still valid stuff. So it's just not appearing in the report. So the pavement preservation and the different ways to go about dealing with the roads is all the same program that we're pursuing now.
So you mentioned that they don't want to see the flowery stuff. Is that like, did you get instructed to take that out? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, when you read the information that was on those pages, I think it's relevant to the update of the plan. So were you instructed by the deputy or the minister to remove that?
No, it wasn't like that. It was like we had new public affairs and communications people that move into the department, and everyone that comes in wants to do their own version of the front end of the document, and so they felt it was probably better to be more succinct, I guess.
So even I could feel the daggers coming from the gallery down as you threw your communications people under the bus a little bit. Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was no directive.
No.
Okay, all right. Going through preparing, as I was stating, a lot of information was provided to us, and one of the packages that I went through was, of course, some of the information that this committee received in the past, and it talked about the trends of paving, the cost of paving, and I'll get a little bit into that now. But one of the charts that was provided to the committee, and it was revolved around the paving plan, of course, and the need to try to address the cost of tendering for a number of years. And of course, in 2009, at that time, costs were 2.5 times higher than New Brunswick for some of the chip sealing and paving. So there was a whole package provided to the committee and from yourself and the deputy on why we should go that way. And it showed charts that saw a trend in the costs and that. So I'm going to spend some time on that. One of the charts that we received was all the contracts that were awarded to vendors. And I apologize if this is available. Is that something that is available currently of all the vendors? Is that something publicly that we can get a hand?
Yeah, your public or procurement will put all that out on their website. That's all public, yeah.
Okay. So one of the charts that was provided in support of the paving plan was, of course, the 5-year comparison of single and double chip sealing prices from 2008 to 2012. And in that chart, there was a significant decrease in the cost. I'm wondering now, in our environment where we are today, do you have that same comparison from 2012 to current to the current year? And are you able to provide the committee with such a chart? I would assume it's tracked. And I'm just wondering if you could give us or tell us what the single and double chip sealing prices are and the trends over the last number of years.
I don't have it with me today. Of course, we dismantled the plant and the chip seal crew, so I don't have a comparator against our own sector. But okay. You don't know.
Mr. Hackett.
Yeah, we can find that information out for you. That's pretty readily available. I don't have it here today, but we can certainly track the last number of years and who's done what where and so on and so forth.
That'd be great. And I understand we don't have the plant, but we still have the cost, and that's really what I'm getting at. What are the costs today, and are we getting the best bang for our buck, and hopefully decisions of the government move in the direction that we're achieving that.
In general, I guess if I just say to it that in the last couple of years, at least the last 2 construction seasons, prices have pretty much stayed the same. They haven't gone up very much. We've had a fair amount of competition, both locally in Nova Scotia and then competition coming in from New Brunswick as well. So that's stayed fairly steady. And so we're getting still pretty good value on most of our projects anyway. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that. And hopefully we can have a couple of years, not just a single year. I would think from 12 on would be great to have that. One of the other things that was one of the reasons why we went down, the previous government went down the road of the plant was around the bids per contract, and of course seeing a rise in, especially in rural communities, the cost really significantly higher than others. And we also had bid per contract chart in that. Is that something you keep track of also, and are you able to pull that off and provide the committee on where we stand the last few years on bids per contract?
Yeah, we can find that information as well. Yep.
Very accommodating. Thank you very much. Saves us from doing some foy pops and stuff. Also, the average asphalt price by county. So I'll probably go through a number of things, and hopefully at the end you'll just say, we'll provide. So I assume the asphalt price per county, we'll be able to get that.
Yep.
And then also, we also were provided a chart from 2007 to 12, the top 4 contractors' total asphalt tonnage. Is that something that is available publicly? Excellent. And then also asphalt price per year. We'll be able to get something like that.
Yeah, it'd be like average asphalt prices, but
excellent. Yeah. Well, I look forward to all that information. That's great. So I'm going to go, and the Deputy Minister opened the door on this through a previous question. Around the federal government throwing out the P3 screen for infrastructure projects, which I think is important. Would you agree that would you agree this? don't trying to engage the deputy here. So the federal government, previous federal government, really emphasized the money and infrastructure money to the provinces if they were ready to go with P3 through P3 models. You mentioned that screen is no longer there. So would you consider that a positive move on the federal government, and would it allow for more projects to be looked at from Nova Scotia that potentially could get funding through the federal government?
Mr. LaFleche.
Oh, I'm not allowed, just my colleague, we're not allowed to press the buttons anymore. Apparently, we press too many buttons. So I'm not allowed to have opinions on whether it's positive or negative. All I have to do is deal with it. The screen was only valid for projects 100 million or more. It wasn't a firm 100 million. It was sort of a flexible one. And we are doing, on the major sections we're looking at under feasibility studies, we're doing the screening anyway. So we can deal with it either way. The federal government, in its recent announcement on that, which I scanned last night, seemed to have indicated some reasons for doing that. I can only assume that the reasons are appropriate in their mind. So we'll live with whatever they do. We will be providing in advance, hopefully, of the federal infrastructure details of how the new money will be delivered, or the increased money will be delivered. We will be, giving them some concepts about what we would like to see in terms of eligibility and so on. And I know the Atlantic provinces are getting together to do that also. But we don't get to have, at least I don't get to have opinions about the federal government, other than the big vote I cast on October 19th. So that's only one.
I won't ask you how you voted, so don't worry about that. But I would assume that it does open up greater possibilities for the province, especially with some of the infrastructure projects that are in front of us. I mean, we're looking at replacing the hospital. We're looking at twinning highways. You mentioned earlier there's 8 different projects you're looking at. I mean, those are a significant amount of investment, well over $100 million on each of those projects. So what I'm trying to get at is that the possibilities now are greater for a partnership with the federal government for infrastructure money. Would you agree with that, where that screen is now removed on those larger projects over $100 million?
Mr. LaFleche.
I think what I would like to see is that the eligibility be broadened. I think because that's what my political masters would like. And indeed, when you were Minister of Health, I flew down to Ottawa and asked that major capital health facilities be eligible for the New Build Canada program, which had not yet been announced. And then when I believe I'm sitting at Minister Glavine, the Minister of Health's desk, when he came in, I also flew down to Ottawa and petitioned the same thing, and we were, of course, unsuccessful. We didn't have many partners, I think, in the other jurisdictions who had similar opinions, but we desperately wanted our major capital health facilities to be eligible for Build Canada. So we have made those requests in the past. If that were to open up, it would open up a significant opportunity for the province. We don't know if that will be or not. There are other people in other areas and other jurisdictions in this province who would like other things to be eligible, which are currently not eligible. So really, the eligibility would be the major benefit. The $100 million P3 screening was something, as I said, we would probably do for large projects anyway. So it's neither here nor there.
So I know I questioned the Minister of Health recently on a briefing note that was prepared for him, and also a briefing note for the Premier around the benefits of P3s. And when we did the FOIPOP, we received all the benefit information, but the risk factor of P3s projects were all blacked out. Were you involved at all in preparing kind of briefing note or advice to, and I know you can't tell me what it was, but were you part of that preparing information for the Minister of Health and the Premier on the risk factor of P3 projects?
I'm not sure I exactly know what you're talking about. So do you have a document or something that you got?
So we did a Freedom of Information request around briefing notes to the Premier and to the Minister of Health, revolving around P3 projects and the benefits of them and the risks of them. Of course, we couldn't see the information about the risks. It was blacked out. I'm just wondering, have you been engaged with your counterparts in those departments on preparing the risks and the benefits of P3 projects if the government chooses to go that route on some of the larger projects in health or in any other sector?
Well, as the department responsible for infrastructure over the last whatever years, we've been involved in advising many governments about P3s. As you know, some governments didn't want to talk about P3s and others did. So we've sort of, we're always there, but I can't think of a specific, I know there was an article in All Nova Scotia, there's a free ad for somebody there, a couple of days ago about a briefing note that was, they FOI-popped or something, about, we weren't involved in that note. We know nothing about that. In fact, if you can send us that article, if you FOI-popped it, we'd appreciate that. But we will.
That's good.
But we will generally, when we go in with a large project, we will generally, no matter what it is, if it's a really large project, and we feel that there's a possibility of some sort of private involvement, let's not call it P3, we would normally have that as one of our options to talk about the pros and cons of and on the table. That's a normal business practice that we had when you were minister and when Mr. Houston's government, I know he wasn't there at the time, but when you were there, Mr. Chair, we had normal practice, and I believe under the government of the chair, we did have some P3 projects on the table, but they never got completed. So this is normal practice. There's nothing, it's our job as civil servants to provide those options, even if the politicians of the day want to turn them down.
So in front of us now, this year and the few years ahead of us, we're going to need to deal with the P3 schools, and we're at a point where the government has to make a decision. Are you involved in that currently, or are you going to be involved in the options that are in front of the government? Is that something you're working on currently?
We would be involved only in that because of our design and construction division, we may do assessments of the buildings, so that those assessments of the quality of the building, the potential life remaining, et cetera, the condition of the building could be factored in the decision making. But those decisions would probably be made, I think it's by the Minister of Education and early childhood.
So when dealing with the schools that the province have given the land to the developer, I mean, that needs to be part of the discussion on what the government will do into the future. Have you evaluated the schools that are coming up on which schools the province actually provided the land, and is that something you're actively working on now? On what do we do in those circumstances when the province initially did own the land? Is that in the discussions or some of the things you're looking at while you're looking at the schools themselves? And are you actively doing that now? Are you in those first few schools that are coming up for renewal? Are you in there currently looking at the conditions of them to try to compose what advice you may give to the Minister of Education on where to go with?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have been invited to participate and assist at education and early childhood development to the extent they need assistance because of our land transaction group and because of our design and construction group. Unfortunately, I didn't bring the people of those groups with me today, and they're not in the legal audience upstairs. So, and the best person to answer that would actually be the Deputy Minister of Education and Early Childhood. So I can't really delve into it anymore. There's not that we don't want to answer your question, but if you want to ask me that offline, I can find out from Tom Guthrow, who's our lead there, exactly how he's been participating in the different working groups on P3, but it's kind of out of the scope of where we are here.
And you don't charge a fee for me to
No,
that
no,
off?
no.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, I would mention that all that FOI popping that's done, sometimes it's just done because people want to say they got a FOI pop. We actually give that information out too without a FOI pop most of the time.
Order will now move to the Liberal Caucus and Mr. Rankin.
Yeah, thanks. I'm interested in both collaboration with municipalities and specifically with HRM being an HRM member. I'm just wondering, when you're tendering out for paving and other projects, do you ever actually combine a tender with HRM in terms of paving? Do you try to find economies of scale that way, or is that ever an option?
Mr. Hackett.
There can be some things, not so much in paving. If there's sidewalk involved, the municipality usually pays for the sidewalk, so we get together on things like that. We try to coordinate sometimes with municipalities if we're working in their area. Sometimes they have other services like sewer, water, that sort of thing, that we work with them and try to get that work done. If they need to get it done in the same area, we work with them to contribute to the contract, yeah, to get that stuff done at the same time.
I don't want to get too specific to around my area, but it's there is development on the number 3 highway, also known as St. Margaret's Bay Road. So I just want to make sure that there is discussion, because I know HRM is getting very close to, and sidewalks is a big component of that area. It's not directly in my riding. It's as you go into the Bayers Lake Park area. So I just want to make sure discussion continues along that vein.
Yeah, I'm assuming it depends who's leading the work. So if it's HRM's work and they would be coming into our road or near our road, then they would be coordinating that with their district to ensure that both work together. If it was us doing the work, then we would often collaborate with HRM to make sure that we're not interfering with their work, or they join in on it. So I couldn't say specifically for that job what the district is doing, but that's usually the method.
Okay.
Mr. LaFleche?
I think it's important, just in a more general sense, not your area, to know that we do collaborate with the municipalities very much. In fact, when we build schools, there are often road issues. Sometimes there's a road that needs to be built, paved, rerouted. There's school bus issues. We collaborate very closely with the municipal officials. When we do major construction, like we've recently done in Pictou County a couple of years ago, Antigonish, also CBRM, Minister McClellan has had very close discussions with Mayor Clark on the 125 twinning. So we're always connecting with them because our roads connect together. In HRM, of course, we've had a lot of connection on the potential for the By-High and Bayers Road. Of course, I know that that's not popular with some of the councillors, so we won't talk about that anymore. Yeah. But we will obviously cooperate wherever we can and work with the municipalities. And we have very good relations. Bruce does, and I do, and Peter does, and all of our district directors who are here today deal very much with the head of the public works section in all of the towns and municipalities.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I know that you met with myself and councillors on some of the signage issues, and I think that was expedited because of that. So I'm going to have to ask a little bit about snow plowing, and I was interested in the comments about the usually municipalities handle their own snow plowing. Are we the only province that has a major city center where the province actually does snow plowing in what they consider rural, but still part of HRM? So that's part of my area, part of Halifax Atlantic, part of 2 or 3 other of our electoral districts. I'm just wondering if this is a big anomaly in Halifax, where we actually have the province having to go into some of the suburban and rural sections.
Mr. LaFleche.
Off, and then Barb, continue. It is an anomaly, and when you asked if we're the only ones, I believe there might be one other province. I'm not sure right now. Okay. But generally, yes. The answer is, because we own the roads, we do the plowing on them. But we are creating more and more partnerships with towns and municipalities wherever we can to ensure that the jurisdiction which is best able to do the plowing does it. So we swap roads sometimes, right, and we swapped like areas. For instance, we're very good at large highway plowing. We have the equipment for that, big equipment, but we don't have a lot of the small J-class subdivision equipment. So when it comes to that, and we're not well equipped perhaps to as efficiently as a town or a municipality do those small little cul-de-sacs and things like that. So we swap with them as we can. We're looking at more and more swaps with them in the future, so that the jurisdiction with the equipment and the staff which is best suited does what they do, and we do the part we're best suited. So we do exchanges. I think we have quite a few of them in Beachville, out of Beachville, don't we? Subdivision exchanges?
Ms. Bailey.
Okay.
Yes, we have some of the local roads. As the deputy said, we're better on the higher speed highways with our trucks. and the little subdivision streets, if we can swap off. And we also contract out a lot of the smaller subdivision, or some of the smaller subdivision areas.
Right.
Because the contractors, they have their equipment they utilize in the summer, and this provides year-round utilization for them.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was actually my next question is, I know last year we had a lot of highway plows going into subdivisions, and the contracted out areas that HRM had more conducive equipment going in through. So this year, have we been able to source more equipment that does subdivisions, or have we contracted out? And can you state roughly order of magnitude, what's the percentage of areas that are contracted out? I'm interested in Beachville, but if you just give me a broad scope, that'd be fine.
I can't comment on just Beachville, but it's province-wide. We probably run around 375 plows, and at the current time, we have 29 of them contracted out to the private sector. We increased by, I believe, 6 units this year. So there's 29 of, say, 375 contracted out now.
Okay, so there's more contracted out this year than there was last year. Okay.
Yes.
Do you know if that happens to be in the HRM?
We increased we had a couple new contracts in HRM, but we also tried another performance-based contract there, and the bids didn't work out. So our own forces are going to be doing it this year, and we will reevaluate next year.
And is there any interest in combining any of those tenders with HRM, given that some of these sections fall right in between the same companies that are tendering in between? So I'm talking about economies again. Do you ever consider, what about one tender where it's shared in between two levels of government?
Yes, that suggestion was just brought up to me last month. And yes, it's something we're going to explore with HRM. The only issue is their levels of service and our levels of service are different. But yes, economy of scales would be very good.
Okay. I do have more questions, but I want to pass it on to my colleagues. Thanks.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you very much. My first time on the committee here. I guess actually I can almost say it's the first time I'm envious of the two opposition parties. We have 5 to share 20 minutes of questions, and those lucky folks had 20 minutes each. But in saying that, I'll be quick. First off, I just wanted to mention that, we as Nova Scotians, I think from my observations, are very lucky in the Maritimes that compared to the other provinces, we do have roads, I think, of better shape and better conditions than our other Maritime colleagues, and I do thank the hard work. I also want to, note myself personally, I'm very pleased with the support, the cooperation that I have of my regional staff and folks like Barb and the ones that come down and really pay attention. I can't say how much I appreciate that. And that coordinated response to working closely with them, I can't say enough to my colleagues. Question. Curious about, you'd made the comment, there's too much road for our tax base. And also you talked about taking our roads from pavement to gravel. What is the plan? I understand that we don't have a capital budget for gravel roads, an envelope there to build those. If we're going to walk the walk, what would you say, it's Christmas coming up, would be your wish list to maybe start that conversation amongst all of our colleagues?
Mr. Fitzner.
So, based on, I don't think it's any surprise there's a big infrastructure deficit in the province, and so every year the amount of spending, even in the good years, is not enough to maintain all the infrastructure in a condition that we'd like to keep it in. So every year things fall off, they don't get done. Some of these paved roads with low volumes, they get worse and they get worse, and people want them paved, and there simply isn't enough money in the program to get to them all. So the level of service is dropping radically. So, we need to start having a conversation with the communities around some of the suggestions that were made today about having a good, solid gravel road program. If people would be able to see what a properly built and constructed, maintained gravel road looked like, I think that they would prefer it quite a bit more to what they're experiencing now on some of these roads. So I think it's a dialogue that needs to happen with the MLAs, with the communities, you know, and to get a couple of pilot projects there that people could see it and then decide for themselves. Now there's issues around gravel roads that people don't like, the dust and different things like that, but I think they would find we could be able to maintain those much more cost effectively, and overall they'd have better level of service.
So is there a way that we can, or I should ask maybe first off, has there ever been an initiative put forward by government to, through an ad in the newspaper or through just simply something that MLAs could have in their hands to show the design differences and the benefits in that?
We haven't really, no, we haven't done it that way. We've had a couple of projects that we were preparing to pulverize the roads and re-gravel them. The one that we were planning to do this year just got delayed a little bit, and it got late in the winter, so we didn't do it. We had one down in Route 203 down there. And
okay,
yeah.
I'd be very much interested if that's possible to get. I think it would be. I wouldn't mind promoting it and finding if there was opportunities myself, because I know there's a few candidates that I have that. I understand, you know, how sensitive it is to try and bring that to the community, but I think in this world that we're in today, it might be fruitful. One other area I just wanted to delve in quickly also was the right-of-ways of 100 series trunks and connectors, and even local roads. I do understand, you know, we're challenged with our infrastructure for rural internet. And I do understand that there are some internet companies that are interested potentially in accessing the shoulders or outside of the actual paved portion of the road. Is that something that you feel that we could address maybe a little bit more proactively with some of these companies?
Mr. Fitzner.
There's the right-of-ways were originally, you know, procured, I guess, to allow for the road infrastructure. So you have basically now a public corridor, and there's other parties that want to be on it, the Power Commission and the telecommunications companies and this type of thing. We always have to sort of keep in mind the safety aspect of it. The more that you put in close to what we talk about, a clear zone outside the road, so if somebody goes off the road that they have so much time for the car to come to a stop before they hit something. So we're cautious about how much we put into the right-of-ways. We also need it, last year was a perfect example on the snow clearing. We needed to store the snow. And a lot of cities and stuff, they have to lug the snow down to the harbor and dump it in, which is quite expensive. We're able to push it off to the side. So there's those kind of conflicts, but I think we're always open to look at, you know, opportunities there for people to get on that land. In many cases, that's the only opportunity. When the gas pipelines came, and it's the only opportunity sometimes to get these things in a corridor.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question exactly.
No, I just wanted to make sure everybody's still thinking about it. That's my main reason. One final comment. Your plow tracker was a huge success. Some of the questions I've had out in the general public in the summer is, could we do the same thing for our road graders? Everybody wants to know when the road's going to be graded. And it might save an awful lot of calls to your offices if that technology could, and we could promote that ourselves. So I'll close with that.
Actually, that idea was brought up later this spring, and we had almost finished our grading at the time. But yes, we're going to look at that next year and try and provide a list of which roads we're going to grade, and then people can look on the tracker and see where the grader actually is.
Thank you.
Ms. Miller.
Hello, and thank you for coming in. You know, it's funny, when we started, my colleague had mentioned in her address to the throne speech that her main subject was roads, roads, and roads, and I thought, oh, your area must be different than mine. And then we started getting calls. And it was 70% of the calls that come in my office are about roads, potholes, bush clearing, and everything. And I really want to commend the people with TIR that work in my area and that work in the province. You know, we've had Peter Taylor doing a really great job for us. I think he's been in contact with our office on a daily basis. Brad McGuinness, you know, does a great job for us, Don Millett. And really appreciate all the efforts of your group. I want to say family because it really seems like that sometimes. You know, you do such a great job for us, and on a day-to-day basis, we wouldn't be able to do the work we do without your support. So I want to thank you with that. Also, just recently, I was at a recycling facility in Milford, and they recycle tires, and I believe that they're trying to get into some kind of a program to do road construction, to do on and off ramps, that type of thing. Is that an efficient system? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Mr. LaFleche.
Mr. Fitzner and Hackett will probably answer in detail, but it's interesting you asked the question because I happen to be in charge of the corporation that owned the tire recycling facility about 15 years ago. No longer. We sold it quite a few years ago, over a decade ago, and after a major tire fire, etc. And at that time, we tried to promote different ways of using recycled tires. Of course, there was the cow. You were in the cow industry, right? The milking industry, and of course, there's that application that a lot of people had, but it's not a very high value application. So one of the things we tried to do was promote roads, and we did 3 tests about 15 years ago down in the Annapolis Valley in Annapolis and Digby County, and basically as an underfill. And those have stood up over the years, and about 4 years ago, the minister of the day announced he was looking at doing some more, and I believe we've done some more since. So did you want to, or Bruce or Peter, do you want to talk about that?
Mr. Fitzner.
So yeah, they make a product they call a tire-derived aggregate, and it's a lightweight fill basically, and it's useful when you have soil conditions where there's not a lot of bearing capacity in the soil, and so you don't want to overload it with normal heavy, fill, so you can use it there. We did a recent pilot project with HRM at the new bus ramp that comes out at Beachville, and they used that quite a bit. I think they used every bit that the company had to build that. So it's something that we're looking at if the circumstance is right and we have a big fill, and it may be possible in future, like twinning projects, to use more of that. We've also had a project with Michelin down in Pictou area where they were actually trying to incorporate the rubber into the asphalt itself, and we had the designs and everything done, but the test never materialized, but it was something that we're aware of, and we're looking for opportunities for those sort of recycling opportunities. Yeah.
Great. Another question that I have is about bridges. I know that they are a challenge. I'm thinking about one in particular that's in my area, Garden Bridge, that something went through, construction truck or something like that a couple of years ago. I know it's slated for replacement next year, I believe, in the next year. Do you know if that's going to be a single or a double bridge? I'm hearing a lot from residents in the area who want to know if it's, a single. There's a lot of traffic, a lot of people are waiting. So the good news would be that it is going to be a double bridge.
Mr. LaFleche.
I think the people I'm not allowed to look at are saying it's 2-lane. Would that be correct? Yes. Okay. I think we're all doing 2-lane now. I know there was some question about doing 1 lane, but usually that's a temporary Bailey Bridge. Or do we not do 2-lane?
Mr. Hackett.
But all new bridges are 2 lanes now?
No, not necessarily, but we try to look at the circumstances, and if it just requires, the traffic volumes are very low, we could go with a 1-lane bridge. If the sight distance are good and the conditions are good, you don't need a 2-lane bridge, but for that particular bridge, it was decided to go with a 2-lane bridge. So.
Wonderful. Good news. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Just about 35 seconds left, Ms. Lonis Croft.
Roads, roads, and more roads. I get more calls about roads than my colleague. I get about 80% of my calls are on roads. But I do appreciate the work that has been done by the crews in my area. You know, a lovely bridge in New Germany and some good paving activities, the Broome Bridge, which borderlines my communities, were very necessary and greatly appreciated. But still, roads tend to be a real issue for me.
Order. I'm sorry, time has expired. We'll move back to Mr. Houston. This round, each caucus will have 11 minutes.
11 minutes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the information request I had about the maintenance budget, we're going to try and get a breakdown of what's now 82 million, 60 million plus 22. By as finely diced as we can get it. And I asked for some historical perspective on that, and I'd just like to clarify that. Could we get maybe 5 years of what the maintenance spending by zone has been? That's just a clarification on that. Now, there's been chat here today about taking a paved road and making it into a gravel road. And we can talk about the pros and cons of that for sure, but I think most people, particularly those that live on those roads, would consider that a downgrade, right? The thing that I found interesting was that probably a lot of people that live on gravel, think they live on a gravel road, don't live on a gravel road. I find that, I'm pretty concerned about that. So if we're talking about downgrading roads, can you tell me, is there ever any dirt roads that are kind of upgraded to what the department would consider a gravel road? Can you think of the last one that might have been upgraded?
Mr. LaFleche.
First of all,
bearing in mind we have 11 minutes for a few questions.
Generally,
has there been any dirt roads upgraded?
We'll answer all those
roads?
questions, but the first part is we generally the roads we want to return to gravel are low volume and the pavement is beat to hell. The base is usually shot. So it's not you're getting a worse road, you're getting a way better road when you get a gravel road. And the problem is that type of road is usually such a low volume and it's such a cost that it never makes the list for
I don't want to debate the merits of it. I'm more curious now about those people that think they live on a gravel road.
There was at one time, many years ago, when I had a lot more black hair, there was a policy that we wouldn't pave any new gravel roads. That policy disappeared at some point in history, and I think we've done some in the last decade. Peter, do you know? Or
but you're still talking about what you call a gravel road. I'm talking about what you wouldn't call a gravel road. What you would call would dirt road be the right classification for something?
Well,
if it's
call
not
it a gravel road, but it's more dirt base than anything else with gravel on top.
So is there a distinction in, like, if I'm right now, I'm thinking about all those people who live on the roads that say my road hasn't seen gravel for 15 years, and it hasn't. Right now, I'm wondering about those people right now, are they ever going to see gravel? Because what I took from the comments earlier was, no, they won't, because they don't actually live on what you would call a gravel road. Is there any hope for those people to get gravel on their road?
Ms. Bailey.
Yes, I guess we were differentiating gravel and dirt roads. Actually, we call them all gravel roads, even though some.
So do you classify gravel roads? Do you have a Class 1 gravel road and a Class 2 gravel road?
No, we don't.
So gravel road's a gravel road?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if a gravel road's a gravel road and I live on a gravel road, then I should get gravel every 2 to 3 years, I think was what I heard last time.
Well, if we had the money to do that, yes. But what the local managers and directors do is they have a certain pot of money for graveling, and they prioritize the roads. It's just like repaving roads. There's only so much money to go around. So the roads are prioritized, and based on the funding, we get so many done each year.
Okay, so this all feeds into my, we want safe roads. And there's a lot of things, there's a lot of reasons for that could make a rural road unsafe. One of them that I hear a lot about is there's no more shoulders on a lot of roads. And is there much money being spent on shouldering roads, re-shouldering roads? I don't know what your terminology would be, but I definitely see shoulders of roads falling away. Right. If you happen to stick a tire in one of those, it's a very serious safety concern. How does that rank in the scheme of making roads safer?
Mr. LaFleche.
As far as paved roads are concerned, we do have a program. I mentioned the Blue Route earlier. And in many cases, we cost share with municipalities to put the shoulders on so we can have cycling. And we've done quite a bit of that in the last few years. There's a couple of municipalities have been very aggressive in working with us to do that. So as far as paved roads are concerned, we're doing a lot more shoulder work than probably we've ever done. And we're doing it according to a plan, using an active transportation plan that the municipality or the town would have. And sometimes
So the municipalities are recommending roads where shoulders should be done. I would call that the steroid version of road shouldering when you're actually adding a bicycle lane. I'm less concerned about the steroid version of shouldering, and I'm just concerned about safe shoulders, which would not include a bicycle lane, but would actually include a
which would be
shoulder to a road.
gravel shoulders.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Bruce will answer that.
Mr. Fitzner.
So we under our RIM program, we do have a category for shoulder graveling each year, and we have a standard that once it gets so low, we're supposed to go replenish the gravel. Last year's budget was about $2 million across the province to just do specifically graveling the shoulders where it's falling off, and there's a dip. The other thing that we have is a program. We call them retrievers, and it goes along. They might have seen them in some of your areas in the spring, and it's like a harrow basically, and it pulls the gravel back up from the side of the ditch. And when you first do it, it looks like a lot of sod and stuff cut up, and people don't like it, but the sod dries out and the gravel's still there. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what about, so $2 million on shouldering? What about on brush cutting?
So on brush cutting,
Because brush cutting is something else that I think makes roads unsafe in a hurry.
yes.
We had a motorcycle accident in my area that was probably caused because of lack of vision for the brushes.
So last year we had, let's follow this over, about $1 million allocated for brush cutting under the RIM program. On top of that, there's a sort of provincial program where they go out on the 100 series with the big machines and do cutting. And then there's individual areas that have an attachment that goes on the grader, a big arm, and they do some limited brush cutting as well. But
So $2 million on shouldering, $1 million on brush cutting. It's,
under RIM.
is that enough or not enough?
Well, I mean, you know, it's hard to say that.
To keep the roads safe?
Yeah.
Is it enough to keep the roads safe?
You know, I think we do keep the roads safe, given the way if there's something extreme happens, we prioritize it, and it gets done. Could it be done better? You know, I'm not going to argue that. You know, we'd all like to be able to have more resources to do more of that type of work. Yeah.
Okay, and the shouldering in particular, because if the shoulder slips away, it doesn't take long for the road to slip away with it. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, once you lose that support at the shoulder, your asphalt starts cracking at the edge, and then you start,
Yeah. Okay, so I think I have just a couple minutes left, and I do want to talk about this whole issue of wrap when it's being peeled off the roads and trucked back. I hear a lot from truckers about this per ton mile thing versus per hour. And I wonder about the impact on the roads, because a lot of times when a job is per ton mile, I hear about trucks being overloaded. There might be a gentleman's agreement that they won't be flagged and fined and stuff. And I know that if you're overweight on a road, you're going to deteriorate the road. So in my area specifically, and I'm sure that it's certainly probably not unique to my area, this has happened, and it's really hurt some of the roads that they trucked over. So I'm thinking of the Pine Tree area where they were trucking over a road that got completely, it was a fine road, but it got demolished on a job. And the department's hands were kind of tied to step in and say, whoa, stop it, you're hurting this road, because of the way the tender had been issued. So two questions that come out of this. And when you're putting out tenders, have you considered designating the route that would be trucked along to preserve the roads that are fine and not get deteriorated, looking for the shortest, cheapest route? And when you're dictating those routes or designing those routes, let's say, would you involve like the people who actually know the roads, like the Truckers Association for the area and things like that? So overweight trucks being part of a job taking rack back to the pit, and routes. That's kind of one question and two there, a bonus question for whoever wants it.
Mr. LaFleche.
Peter answer the part of that question, but I want to say that you've raised a very good point. I talked about this last year. There's been, it's not only people working on our jobs, it's people working on other construction jobs. Two places last year I caught truckers who were destroying a brand new chip seal. Caught one this year in Wake Up Hill Road, and we've gone in and dealt with them. Caught them on Marriott's Cove Road last year east. You know, this is just, you put in a brand new chip seal and someone wants to build mansions or whatever, or some construction project, and they just go in. This is not a project related to us. So we've generally got that problem, and we've got to be very vigilant about this.
Did those guys get fined that you caught?
That's what I don't know. Did they? Did they? I'm looking up there to the man there. No, he says, no, they didn't get fined, they got lectured. Okay.
Probably.
But it was lucky because we hadn't put the final chip on yet, so we were able to fix it. But we get this all the time, and in terms of our jobs, Peter can probably better answer what type of instructions we give the TANS, Truckers Association of Nova Scotia members.
Very quickly, Mr. Hackett.
Just want to address that one item on the overweight trucks. On the weights that you're talking about, there's no reason that those trucks should be overweighted. The contractors and the truckers should understand how much material should go on the truck to be below the weight for the road. If they're going overweight, then there has to be a communication between those two. What they're discussing there is about the ton mile, and we go by the ton mile for rack material because it's a weighed material and it's a paid by a weighed material. So the department does that for accounting purposes. If you go by the hourly rate, which they always did, I don't see what the difference was by going by the hourly rate than it was by going by the ton mile. They still have to figure out how much material is going on the truck. So they should be able to figure that out.
I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quickly, what I'll do is I'll provide the deputy and the department the package that was provided to the public accounts earlier on some of the charts that I was asking for updates, so that way they're exactly what I was looking for, and I would hope that I could receive that information sooner than later. I'm not looking at months. I'm hoping I would love to have by the end of the week, but if you could get it to us as quickly as possible, I appreciate it. So I'll provide that to you before you leave at the end of the questions. Just quickly on one of the answers I thought I heard on previous question from the deputy, and just wondering if I heard it correctly. And I think you indicated that you do not track road work by constituents. Is that true? Did I hear that, or did I? Mike. Alan?
Mr. LaFleche, I'm sorry.
Sorry. We track by county for capital construction. I think the question there was from you or Mr. Houston more about actual maintenance, like when we get down to fine details like brush cutting and stuff. The area managers do know what they do in their area. I'm not sure we have that breakdown. Do we, Barb? We can? For maintenance? By area manager, but not necessarily by political constituency. But we do have the capital, like the 5-year road plan is all divided up by county, which I know in the case of my former great hockey player there who popped his head in, Mr. Beliveau, he's in 2 counties, so we have to look at things like that.
Right.
And there are some roads like that Bruce mentioned that we'd love to gravel the Tin Mine Road. That would be a great test. The 203 it's called? Yeah. That's actually in 3 MLAs counties. So sometimes you get into those difficulties where we can't get it down to that fine level.
All right, thank you. I did provide, or hopefully they'll provide you with a copy of the briefing note that I was referring to earlier. And just quickly on that, of course, that was at the start of it was from Dr. Peter Vaughan, who's Deputy Minister of Health, to Dave Darrow. And the reason I want to go back to it a little bit is I'm a bit concerned with the fact that your department and yourself, Deputy, overseeing potential projects coming up, and some of the details in that briefing note are very specific, and I'm concerned that you're not in the loop if that's the case, and maybe you could correct me down the road. But I mean, in it indicated on page 3, for example, that it's difficult to find examples of successful P3s where no criticisms in audits by provincial auditor generals it's been discovered that, and then it indicates some of the projects in Nova Scotia, for example. So on roads, in the briefing note, it estimated that more than 300 million in tolls were produced on the Cobblegood Pass for a deal in which private financiers put up 66 million. The government is paying an effective interest rate of 10% for 30 years, twice its rate of borrowing. So with those details, I'm concerned that they didn't turn to the deputy who oversees some of these large projects for advice, or would they have maybe just asked someone in the department for some of the facts? Just for some clarification.
This briefing note, in fact, yesterday I phoned Peter Vaughan, Dr. Vaughan, and asked him what this was all about when I saw it in All Nova Scotia, and he sent me this. He called it an S-bar, and I actually don't know what an S-bar is. I don't know if anybody knows, but we'll have to look that up in Wikipedia. So this was a briefing note he said he provided personally for David Darrow, although I know it was listed as being provided for someone else. We didn't know anything about this briefing note, and this material is not being used. Minister McClellan is in charge, as you know, of all large capital construction in the province. So his department, through us, through John O'Connor and Tom Guthrow, are working on any health capital projects. This has nothing to do with that. We're briefing the cabinet and the premier on those projects, and I don't know what this briefing note has to do. This was something for Dave Darrow, and I'm not sure that it's part of the regular government system. I just don't know. You'd have to ask someone else. But the details on the highway, when I saw that, I was quite concerned because, as you know, the tolls are collected, in fact, by us, who are the owners of the corporation, not the financiers. So these details all seem to be rather strange and don't fit our world. Diane is going to explain that in a minute. And the other thing that's strange about this is that it refers to ownership of the highway by people who, in fact, don't seem to own it. A private company.
So you would say it's incorrect. Incorrect information?
And in fact, and then it refers to the Auditor General. So immediately, my buddy Michael Pickup over there, I was wondering what he had to do with it, and I found out that no, it was not Michael Pickup, nor was it Michael Pickup's predecessor, but it was the predecessor of the predecessor of the predecessor of Michael Pickup, who in 1996, before the highways was completed, did some sort of an audit pre-construction on the highway, on the initial purchasing, the procurement of the original companies that did the construction. So the Auditor General material referred to is in fact from 1996. Okay. And I got a copy of that. So I don't know where this came from, or it's just not part of our current paradigm. Now, Diane. Okay.
Well, no, actually, we only have a couple minutes, so I believe you. And I think I'm correct that the nature of this information is not only going to from the Deputy Minister of Health, it's going to the deputy that oversees and supports the Premier's office. I mean, for you to sit here and tell me that this is incorrect, I'm extremely concerned that the Premier's office and the Department of Health is being briefed on an SBAR, which is a situation background assessment. I think that's what it stands for. And I'm concerned with that. Have you prepared something like this for your deputy, and if so, are you able to provide it, or will we have to go through the Freedom of Information request?
We haven't prepared anything like that. Like I explained earlier, when we have any large capital project, and this is being done in the feasibility studies, it will be done in any large capital project, we automatically do some work on whether there could be a private interest in that project, which would be more beneficial for the taxpayers. That's an automatic thing we've always done, whether the government likes it or not. And we will be doing that on the hospital construction. We will do that on any other construction we do, which is of a large capital value. And so this is a normal course of events that we would provide that type of information, pros and cons, potential. You may have heard that Minister Kasoulis has mused about that for some projects across the street here. It's always part of our deliberations. But we have no specific S-bar. I didn't even know what an S-bar was, so I have not been able to produce one for Deputy Blewett, who is the current deputy and did not get this note.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think government must ask themselves, and I think you're reassuring us that when making decisions about public importance or public infrastructure, you have to look at the benefits. Do the benefits outweigh the risk? And I think you mentioned that in your opening, and it's not just in that briefing note. There's study after study after study from across Canada around concerns around P3 projects and infrastructure projects. In the same briefing note, which I know are in other studies, so I know that maybe that road part is maybe outdated, but we're looking at Ontario, for example. Auditor General recently revealed P3 hospital in Brampton cost public over $200 million over what it would have cost if they did it in-house. So there is mounting evidence from across jurisdictions that are raising the flag of concern around moving forward with large projects in a P3 model. Do you share that concern, and why are we pursuing that as a province if every jurisdiction, some ending up in court more recently around these types of projects? Should we not just look the other way, look at the federal government with the renewal in their willingness to hopefully transfer funds to provinces for large infrastructure projects other than through a P3 screen? Why are we pursuing that, and are you advising the minister that we should be looking at doing this within government control so that we don't see what happens in other jurisdictions happen?
Well, I'll just start off, and I think Mr. Fitzner wants to talk a bit about it. We're going to look at what makes sense for Nova Scotians. There's no one answer. All projects are different. In fact, we will be going to look at this famous hospital in Brampton at some point in the near future. Some consultants came in to us and told us this is the greatest deal ever. Other people have told us it's not a great deal, like yourself. So we will be doing our own research on any project. As you know, your own government and that of Mr. Mr. McMaster did a P3 project on the Nova Centre, which is effectively what it is. It wasn't P3 Canada, but is a P3 project. And so, and the current government has continued that. So all three parties have sort of agreed that the Nova Centre was an appropriate way to do a P3. And that project made sense for Nova Scotians. So there are times when it works and times when it doesn't work. And what we have to advise our minister is, when is it not going to work, and when will it work? And we'll advise them to do the ones where it works and to not do the ones where it doesn't work. So Bruce, what do you have to say?
Mr. Fitzner.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of mention that P3s can be many different types and forms, and that they are just one tool that we have to build infrastructure, but they're like the deputy says, they're not all good, they're not all bad. So what we do is a thorough business case on any of the major projects that we do, and we examine it through that lens to see if there's an opportunity there. But we would, if it wasn't a good opportunity, we wouldn't do it.
Order. Thank you. We'll move to Ms. Lonis Croft.
Thank you. And where I left off is we talked about how you meet with MLAs to go over the needs of the constituency. Can you tell me how much influence an MLA has in the day-to-day work that goes on in their constituencies?
Mr. Fitzner.
So when we put our programs together, we look at a wide range of things. We go out and do our own technical assessments on that. We talk to our crews that maintain the roads, and we talk to MLAs. And MLAs represent their constituents. And so they, to us, are sort of a funnel through which all the calls and all the comments that you get get put down into something that's easier for me to deal with, so you can bring things to me. So I consider it very important, the advice that we get from the MLAs, and it does have a significant impact, when we're developing our program. But we balance that against sort of the technical side. So we try to find projects that are both big interest to the constituents and sort of fit in with the pattern of what we're able to do on the roads and get those on the program. Yeah.
But in the day-to-day operations, I sit in my office and I take call after call, my assistant does, and we try and package it up and we make priorities. We define, we follow a protocol. We ask that they call the DOT office first and wait for a response from them. We don't step in until they haven't had response from DOT. Then we go forward, and so how does an MLA get the top priorities for rim work and whatnot really seriously looked at from the department locally?
So the best thing to do, and what I advise people to do, and I think a lot do, is that you should have some regular meetings with your local staff, district director, area manager, operations supervisor on an annual basis, or if not more often, to talk about those priorities so that you can bring to the table the stuff that you're hearing, and they can help them to shape their plans for the next year. So, for instance, the RIM program, we'll know our budget probably sometime early in the new year. We'll know roughly what our budget will be next year, and then we start developing the RIM program. So, in January, February would be a good time for you to meet locally with your local staff and have that discussion on what the RIM program might look like for next year.
So how do we prioritize on a regular basis? When we have like a road that we constantly call in about and the work does not get done, how can we be more influential, or are we not influential in getting that work done?
So basically, I think what we, have to do when we get a call from an MLA is to go out, assess the work, to see what it can be done, and then we have a responsibility to get back to the MLA to know, what's the art of the possible. Not always can we get everything that people want, because we have some limits on how much we can do. But, in every case, it should be looked at. It should be, roughly costed, how much this is going to be to do. We got to try to fit it in the ongoing program plan that we have and that type of thing. So we don't like to just drop everything every time a call comes in and start moving people all around the district to go fix this and to go fix that. We have to have some sort of planned thing. But, our commitment is to get back to you and give you a realistic, idea of when that work may be done. Might not even be done in the current year. Sometimes it might be the following year, but that would be something at least you can take back to your constituent and give them an idea of what it is. And then when we tell you that, then we do our best to make it happen, because we all get in trouble when it doesn't. Yeah.
So,
Mr. LaFleche.
I would like to just comment. You've raised a good point, and earlier Mrs. Miller mentioned Peter Taylor. So everybody has a Peter Taylor, the operations supervisor. Sure. I would encourage that sort of stuff be dealt with at that level. There's maintenance supervisors, operations supervisors, and if you deal with them on a day-to-day basis for bush cutting and stuff, that's great. Then it gets more sophisticated, the road side. What am I going to get done in terms of paving, potholing? You've all got area managers who are the supervisors. Ms. Miller mentioned Brad McGinnis. He's Peter Taylor's boss. And then above them, they're the district directors who are sitting upstairs there. Everybody's got one. Yours is Don Millette, and yours is Steve McIsaac. And you always, I would encourage you, as Bruce says, sit down with those district directors, and then you can always go to Bruce.
Okay. And I'd like you to tell me, because sometimes I get feedback from constituents that they're not happy with the customer service they receive when they call the local depot. So I understand you're changing the way you're handling that. So can you explain a bit more about this new phone line that you're having set up?
Ms. Bailey.
We're currently opening or working on opening a call center, and what in essence that'll do is it'll funnel all the calls for Department of Transportation through this call center. And when people call, they'll be given like a tracker number or whatever to reference their complaint, and the complaint will be, or compliment, whatever it is, will be given to the field staff. They'll investigate, and then the somebody will return the caller's call.
So you expect better documentation so
Yes.
that people like me say, you know, I'm getting a lot of calls about such and such a road needing bushes cut or, you know, potholes. So you'll be able to document better these
Correct.
calls so that we can get rim work done where it's most needed or most requested.
Well, that will be a tool to help prioritize the rim work. But it'll also be great for us for tracking, because if, say, 50% of our calls are bush cutting related, well, maybe we'll have to look at how we allot the money and maybe put a little bit more to bush cutting. Right now, we have no tracking system for incoming calls. They go to a number of different employees in the government. So this will consolidate that and make it a much more efficient operation.
Great, great. I look forward to that improvement.
Yes.
Mr. LaFleche.
Sorry, I think we want to be careful. In fact, the MLA will still be able to get through to the local,
I hope so.
okay? Because there was some fear that, you know, the MLA would just go to the call center. I've had that recent experience with Bell Canada in
I've
Toronto.
got my manager's cell phone number.
Right, that's what you need. There is only one MLA who doesn't need any of that because he has no roads and he's sitting up there. And he doesn't get much service, but he serves you. So, other than that, the other 50 MLAs have pretty good service. There's one other MLA who only has one overpass, but most of you have roads, and most of you should know who your local operations supervisor is.
Thank you very much.
Mr. McGuire, you have just shy of 3 minutes.
Thank you for coming today. So what I'm hearing, and I've been through this process a lot with you guys, and you know, I do have great service from Don and Guy, and actually, sorry, Darcy now, sorry, Jonathan and Hugh and all them. So what I'm hearing is that priorities are based on safety, and it's a fair and collaborative process. I want to talk just for a quick second on last year with the snow removal. We're prepared this year. I know we've talked about that, as long as we don't get another winter from you know, our nightmares again. If you touch quickly on the snow removal, but also on, we heard a little bit on turning roads from gravel to pavement to gravel. We have a prime example of that at Chebucto Head Road, which was taken from a paved road to a gravel road, and I can tell you the people on that road are very happy that that was done. So can you give us some examples of where chip seal and gravel make the road better, and also your thoughts on this upcoming winter?
Mr. Fitzner.
I'll start with the chip seal gravel, and I'll pass the winter down to Barb in a minute. But the we have places in the province where we've used sand seals, which you know, don't really hold up over the long term. In some cases, we've gone out and chip sealed those and made a much better road, and people are happy. In other cases, I know down in Pictou County, we've had some areas where we pulverized the old asphalt road, and we're fairly successful in getting a good chip seal road. Now, there's some minor problems on a few of them, but most of them came out pretty good. The area that we seem to have the most trouble is when we take a gravel road and make it a chip seal road. So we're kind of upgrading it. But what we've been finding is that many of those roads probably have to be built up much stronger before we put the chip seal on it. Otherwise, we go running back, making repairs all the time to them. So the ones that we've turned from asphalt back to chip seal, for the whole, you know, overall, 90% of them have come out great.
But you wouldn't see this as a downgrade. And like I said, I want to go back to my riding once again with Chebucto Head Road. We went from a paved road that was pulverized down to a gravel road. I mean, this isn't a downgrade. This is actually, the people on our road receive much better service now because of the service that with the road. So
well, there's no question on that one, because that road was like a lunar.
You're not in the business
lunar
of
surface, right? And
you know, well, you're not in the business of downgrading, is what?
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
we feel we
exactly.
give a better service
absolutely.
level, right?
Yeah.
The surface type may be considered by some people to be lesser, but the service level goes up.
It's fantastic.
I want to just
Mr. LaFleche, that is, the time has expired, but perhaps you can
My concluding
begin your
remarks.
closing comments, and if you want to offer some comment on that last question.
Concluding remarks, I would like to say that some people get wired up about the surface of the road. The surface of the road is a thin layer at the top, and whether it's asphalt, chip seal, or gravel, what really makes the road, in my mind, is the base of the road. That used to be my former career. So the base of the road, that, 2 to 3 feet going down, is what really counts. And people lose sight of that. You can have a surface of gravel or a surface of chip seal, and you can have a way better road than an asphalt road with a crap base. So what we try and do, and what we're talking about when we build new gravel roads, is build up that excellent base so that road is low maintenance for years and can be maintained easily. Anyway, I would like to conclude by thanking everybody for their questions. I know we have some follow-up, and we will follow up. There were some questions on P3 in general and public projects, which were kind of outside the scope of the road area, but we'd be pleased to answer those in another venue, to do with public works and buildings, if that need be. My staff work very hard. I've got a lot of dedicated staff. As I mentioned earlier, they could be earning more in another career. In fact, I was asked by a private consultant why we're all not working in the private sector and making way more money. We could be making way more money working in City of Halifax or City of Cape Breton Regional Municipality. But that's not what we do. We're here to serve the public, and we're trying to be innovative. We're trying to provide the best service we can. We've dedicated, in many cases, our whole careers to public service and to make sure that the citizens of Nova Scotia are well served. So we want to make sure you understand that. We do our best. Sometimes it's frustrating out there. A lot of our staff, particularly snowplow drivers, I was just up to snowplow school in Port Hawkesbury looking at some new drivers, and one of the things I said to them was, you will receive the finger many times this winter. When you get the finger, you're a public servant and you're required to just keep on moving. Remember, we'll have a beer over the finger later, but we can't treat people badly. But in fact, what we do get, and what I'm very proud of time to time, is when our plow drivers or when our maintenance people stop and help stranded motorists, they pull them out. They sometimes, in some cases this summer, tourists were given gas by our staff. Things like that happen. We try and make sure we make the roads safe, and one of the ways we can make them safe is by helping people who are stranded on the roads, sort of, so to speak, get off the road and not become an obstacle. So we do all we can to help people, even if they give us the finger. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. LaFleche, and thank you to your colleagues for being with us today. I know this is a subject that is of great interest to MLAs. So we do have some committee business. There was some correspondence. The first piece is from the Department of Business. There was information requested on the Nova Scotia Jobs Fund. Now, there was a couple of options presented back to the committee. Option one essentially asked the committee to wait for the annual report, and option two states that information can be put together, but they've put an estimate of between $30,000 and $50,000 on the actual request we've made. Do any committee members, and I can't recall which member actually asked specifically for this information, and I know there's some people filling in for regular committee members today. We could put this decision on this off for a week, but I would like, so I'm hearing yes from some of the members. I would like you to take that back to your caucus, discuss it, and perhaps refine the ask. We will have more discussion on this in our next committee meeting. I think that's the safest way to handle that. And unless other members have any specific comments, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who requested that, but I'll take it back to caucus and to our to members on the committee. But I find it, I mean, it's just unbelievable that we'd be asked to pay for this information. We're a standing committee of the legislature that looks at information, and in the 12 years that I've been here, over 12 years, I've been on this committee for eight and a half years, I've never been asked as a committee member that we would, that's how much it would cost. Maybe some clarification, sorry, Mr. Chair, before I go on a
Sure,
on a rant.
sure. I think your concern is about the cost that was raised. It wouldn't be what we would pay as a committee. I guess it would be what the department is saying it would cost to put it together. And that may be subject to some opinion as well. Sometimes the department might say that to, perhaps to discourage pursuing the information. I don't know, but I think what's important here is the department has come back with a couple of options. One, that perhaps the information that's being requested will be part of an annual report. It's just that we would have to wait a little bit to get that information. And the second option is the one that they've said was going to cost between $30,000 and $50,000. I won't say anything further on that. I think maybe I've said too much. But the point being, I think we should put this off until next week. We do have one more meeting, and each caucus can discuss it and have a look at the correspondence from the department. And perhaps we can go back with another ask that's cost-effective and also gets to the root of the information that people were looking for. Do I have members' agreement to go past 11 a.m.? We just have a couple of other issues, so I do, okay. So we will move that to next week. The next piece of correspondence was from the Auditor General's office. There was a request, I believe from Mr. Stroink, about fire drills and what schools completed fire drills, what schools did not complete fire drills within the first week of school. That question is best posed to the Department of Education. And if I have to the school boards, be more specific. So if I have the members, I know that member is not with us today, but if members here support, our clerk could send a letter to each of the school boards asking what schools completed fire drills and what schools did not. Is there agreement on that? I see agreement on that. And the next two pieces of correspondence, I'm just bringing them for your awareness. One was dated November 25th, and that is from the Department of Finance and Treasury Board, information requested from the October 7th meeting, and also information requested from the October 21st meeting. So I just draw those pieces of correspondence, draw them to your attention. And the last and most important piece of business today is the approval of a decision made by the subcommittee on agenda and procedures. You have a record of decision before you. There are 6 topics here that were agreed to in the subcommittee. You'll see them listed before you. Is there support for all of these topics? I'm hearing support. There is support. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is passed that these subcommittee topics are approved by the full committee, and our clerk will proceed now with scheduling. We will have another subcommittee meeting in January to start adding more topics for the new year, into the new year. And the last item I'll mention is that our next meeting is December 9th, next week. It's with the Department of Finance and Treasury Board and Nova Scotia Business Inc. And the subject before us will be the Nova Scotia Film and Television Production Incentive Fund. Unless there's any further business before the committee, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.